This story follows Choi Kang-hyuk, a former Special Forces soldier turned personal trainer and fitness streamer, struggling to keep his gym business afloat during COVID. To de-stress, he reads a Murim novel about a Shaolin monk named Mujin but suddenly wakes up inside the novel as the protagonist, losing his muscular body and finding himself in a strict monastery. Confused but convinced it's a dream, he decides to play along. However, as he faces harsh training and discipline, he starts to question whether he's truly dreaming or if he's trapped in this new reality. Let's start the recap.
Mujin knew that if he didn't give this fight everything he had, there was no doubt he would be the one to die. His opponent was not holding back, and hesitation meant death. He took a deep breath, forcing his mind to sharpen. This was his first real battle, and his life depended on it. So her energy gathered and condensed in her left hand, lunged forward, aiming a precise and lethal thrust toward Mujin. However, in a moment of shocking speed, Mujin caught her wrist mid-strike. Before she could react, his other hand gripped the collar of her robe, and with a powerful twist of his body, he executed a flawless judo shoulder throw. Sohee's body arced through the air before slamming onto the ground with crushing force. A sharp gasp escaped her lips, followed by a splatter of blood as the impact shook her entire being. Lying on the ground, her body trembling from pain and the sheer disbelief of what had just happened, Sohee's mind raced. How did he manage to throw me like that? She thought, gasping for air. I've never seen that kind of technique before. Could there be a martial art like this within the Shaolin Temple? Her dazed state barely lasted a second before she noticed something, a looming shadow. Her eyes darted upward, just in time to see Mujin's fist descending like a hammer toward her. Without thinking, she rolled to the side. The ground where she had been moments ago cracked under the force of Mujin's strike, splintering in all directions like a spiderweb. As she tumbled backward, she kept her palm skimming the ground, gathering loose sand in her fingers. Mujin's sharp eyes immediately caught this, but his thoughts remained resolute. I'll use every trick necessary to win, he decided. Let's see how much she complains about underhanded tactics when she's the one using them. So he didn't hesitate. She swung her hand in an arc, releasing the sand directly at Mujin's face. However, instead of recoiling or flinching, Mujin raised his tattered cowl, an item she had torn from him earlier, to shield himself from the attack. The grains bounced harmlessly off the fabric, dissipating into the air. Sohee's eyes widened in shock. He used the very cowl I ripped off? She thought. Would he even grab it? And more than that, he had the composure to use it effectively? But then, a slow, sinister smile curled across her lips. So what if he blocked it? He let his guard down. Just as she had planned, Mujin had to momentarily obscure his own vision with the cowl. In that instant, she lunged forward with lethal intent, energy surging into her palms. Her grin widened as she whispered, I'll start with your abdomen. She drove her glowing, reinforced fingers toward his midsection, convinced she had outmaneuvered him. Pain, a searing, unexpected agony shot through her hands. Her fingers felt as if they had struck solid iron, and before she could register what had happened, blood began to trickle from the cracks forming along her fingernails. She barely had time to stagger back before the pain overwhelmed her as she collapsed onto the ground. Her vision blurred from the shock, and her mind struggled to comprehend what had just happened. What did he do? She thought in a frenzy. She let out a scream, both in frustration and agony. My hands! What did you do to my fucking hands? Mujin didn't answer. He simply grabbed her by the head, his grip firm and unrelenting. His voice was cold, almost indifferent. Now, then, time to put you into the ground, you damn spy hag. With a swift and forceful motion, he slammed her head against the dirt. The world spun for Sohee, her consciousness fading into darkness. Time passed before awareness began to creep back into her mind. A throbbing ache pulsed through her skull. It hurts, she thought groggily. What happened? Did I faint? That monk. The muffled sounds of voices reached her ears. The noise grew louder, more distinct. Then a sharp, alarmed realization hit her. No, this can't be. Her eyes snapped open. A voice boomed in the room. Are you asking us to believe what you just said? Someone turned to Ryu Jiguang and insisted. Sir, I am certain Monk Mujin is wrong. Ryu Jiguang, standing at the center of the commotion, raised a hand in a calming gesture. Let's not jump to conclusions just yet. The accuser, his expression resolute, pressed on. She's been working with us for over 10 years. There is no way she's a spy. Monk Biab Gang, his brow furrowed, turned to him. Are you suggesting that Mujin is lying? Are you questioning the integrity of a Shaolin disciple? At that moment, so he coughed, drawing all eyes to her. Despite the pain, she smirked. You're finally awake. I guess it's time I explain things, huh? Internally, however, she seethed with fury. I will kill this little bastard. Mujin turned to Ryu Jiguang and calmly began. After finishing my duties at the clinic last night, I was on my way back to rest when I saw her walking alone. That struck me as odd. She's Lady Sealwa's servant, yet she wasn't with her. I followed her and ended up witnessing something shocking. A man dressed in black met her in an abandoned building. They spoke of the clinic's business and confirmed she was operating as a spy. Mujin then pulled off his upper robes, revealing deep, bleeding claw marks across his abdomen. Would an ordinary servant be capable of this? If I hadn't learned Iron Guard, she would have impaled me. I would be dead. As the room absorbed his words, he produced a letter. And here's more proof. A mission report she handed over to the man in black. It's her handwriting. So he felt her stomach drop. That report, that damn monk tricked me into writing it. Silence stretched before Yang Jinpyong finally spoke. The handwriting is indeed hers, and her hand size matches the wounds on Monk Mujin's body. Moreover, she hasn't provided a single counter-argument, only protests. Realization rippled through the gathered people. The tide had shifted. Ryu Jiguang's expression darkened. I understand this request may be unorthodox, but could you leave this matter to us? As this is the Merchant Guild's internal issue, we would like to handle her personally. So his blood ran cold. No, no way. Mujin nodded. I understand. I overstepped, and I apologize. Ryu Jiguang gave him a firm nod. Thank you. You'll be rewarded for this. With a final command, Ryu Jiguang ordered, imprison that servant immediately. As so he was dragged away, her desperate screams filled the halls. That monk set me up. Why don't you believe me? Sealwa, watching from a distance, remained frozen in place, trembling, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. Sometime later, the scene shifted to the Heavenly Merchant Guild estate, specifically to the Shaolin monks' accommodation. After the intense events that had just unfolded, Mujin finally stepped inside, rolling his shoulders and rubbing his neck, exhaustion evident in his posture. He exhaled deeply, his mind still racing, but he reassured himself, fortunately, this matter ended well. Time to get some rest. Just as he took another step forward, a towering figure loomed before him, blocking his path. He instinctively looked up, and his stomach dropped when he saw who it was. Standing there, with arms crossed and an unmistakable fury burning in his gaze, was Monk Biobgang. His expression was stone cold, but his eyes were practically searing into Mujin. Mujin swallowed hard, his pulse quickening. Right, he's here too. Gritting his teeth, his face red with barely contained anger, Biobgang spoke in a firm, demanding voice. Mujin, we need to talk. There's a lot we need to discuss. Why did you act alone without consulting any of us? As the weight of those words pressed down on him, Mujin felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. His mind scrambled for an answer, but all he could think was, I can't tell him the truth, that I was the man in black who tricked Hong So-hee to get evidence. If he knew, it would cause an even bigger mess. With this, the matter should have been settled, or at least, that was what I thought. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Heavenly Merchant Guild's prison, where Hong So-hee was confined, a heavy silence filled the dimly lit cell. Bound and unable to speak, due to the cloth gag tied around her mouth, she sat against the cold stone wall, her breathing shallow. Then, the silence broke as footsteps echoed down the corridor. A figure entered the cell, their presence looming over her like a shadow. Without hesitation, they reached down and untied the cloth, pulling it away from her mouth. Finally, I can speak. Gasping slightly, So he quickly gathered herself and spat out, "Sir, I swear, I didn't do it. It's Mujin. That demonic monk deceived all of you." The man standing before her remained unshaken. His tone was sharp as he asked, "How exactly did he deceive us?" So he clenched her fists, anger flaring in her chest. "That's right. That demon," she hissed through gritted teeth. "He's the one in black. He was the man who asked to meet with me that night." At that, the man's eyes narrowed. He tilted his head slightly and then, in a measured voice, said, "Let me ask you something else then." He took a step closer, his shadow stretching across the floor. "Why did you hand over that letter to Monk Mujin when he asked to meet with you?" The question struck her like a lightning bolt. Her breath hitched. How does he know about that? That damn monk never mentioned it. So how does this man know? Seeing her reaction, the man's expression darkened. His next words were slow and deliberate. "Tell me, Does Mujin still believe I'm just another member of the Heavenly Merchant Guild? His eyes bore into her. Answer me. What is the 3 rules of being a spy? Sohee's throat ran dry. Instinctively, the words surfaced in her mind, ones that had been drilled into her since the beginning. She swallowed hard and replied, the first rule is to only follow the information and instructions that we are given. The second rule is to commit suicide without hesitation if our identity is exposed. She hesitated before muttering the last one. The third rule, her voice dropped to a whisper. We are everywhere. A sinister smirk played on the man's lips. Good, he said. You know them well. And then, in an instant, his eyes turned blood red, glowing like those of a demon. His voice, now a deep, menacing growl, roared through the cell. So why didn't you commit suicide? Her body went rigid as pure terror surged through her. Her breathing turned erratic, her muscles trembling uncontrollably. Then came the sound of flesh being struck. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the prison halls, followed by the sickening splatter of blood. The scene shifted back to Mujin, who stood before Biob Gang with a solemn expression. Pressing his palms together in a respectful gesture, he lowered his head slightly and apologized. It was really urgent, so I went ahead alone to resolve it first. His voice was steady, yet there was a tinge of regret in his tone. Biob Gang remained silent for a moment before stepping forward, placing both hands firmly on Mujin's shoulders. That's not why I'm scolding you, he said, his voice calm but weighted with something deeper. Mujin's eyes flickered with confusion. He had expected anger or reprimand, but this response threw him off. He met Biob Gang's gaze, searching for an explanation in his expression, but found only unwavering seriousness. Biob Gang exhaled, his tone carrying both concern and warning. You were lucky this time. You survived. But the world is far bigger than you think, Mujin. There are countless people out there, people with abilities beyond your comprehension. Some are strange, some are abnormally strong. What would you have done if that woman and the black-clothed individual had been highly skilled fighters? If that had been the case, you wouldn't have escaped unscathed. Mujin's mind raced as he processed Biob Gang's words. I never thought I'd get scolded over something like this, he mused to himself. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, his breath caught. His eyes instinctively focused on Biob Gang's expression, and the words died in his throat. There was something in the older man's face, an unspoken concern that made Mujin hesitate. I hope you'll trust the adults next time, Biob Gang finally said, his voice softer now. Mujin swallowed his pride and nodded. I'm Soda. I'll make sure to do that. Despite his calm reply, Mujin had to suppress the emotions stirring inside him. Biob Gang had always been someone who followed the rules strictly, rarely allowing sentiment to cloud his judgment. But right now, the way he looked at Mujin, it reminded him of his grandparents. The same deep worry, the same unspoken fear of losing someone precious. For a brief moment, Mujin saw past Biob Gang's strict nature. There was genuine concern in his voice, a protective instinct that Mujin had never fully recognized before. Looking up, he met Biob Gang's gaze once more and said, this time with unwavering sincerity, I really will make sure to ask for help next time. As dawn's first light seeped into the grand office of the Heavenly Merchant Guild, Mujin sat across from Ryu Jiguang, who wore a troubled expression. Ryu Jiguang took a deep breath before delivering the news. Hong So-hee died last night in her prison cell. Mujin's eyes widened slightly at the revelation. She's dead. His voice held a trace of disbelief. What happened? Ryu Jiguang leaned forward, his fingers interlocked as he spoke. Early this morning, just as I was on my way to interrogate her, I was informed that she had suddenly died. The timing is suspicious. I believe there's someone inside the Merchant Guild who is either assisting her or monitoring her movements. Mujin's brows furrowed in thought as he listened carefully. Ryu Jiguang continued. Even after deciphering the letter you handed me, there was nothing particularly unusual about its contents, just records of what she had done. However, we've confirmed that she was working as seal with servant, leaking sensitive information about both the Shaolin and our Merchant Guild. Mujin felt unease settle in his gut. He chose his next words carefully. But why are you telling me this? His voice carried an edge of uncertainty. You said before that this was an internal matter for the Heavenly Merchant Guild. You even insisted on handling her imprisonment yourself. So why bring it up to me now? Is there something else I should know? Did I miss something important? At that moment, Ryu Jiguang's expression darkened slightly. A brief flicker of nervousness crossed his face before he composed himself. As expected of Monk Mujin, he thought. Not only did he devise an entirely new approach to running a clinic business, But he also uncovered suspicious activities within our guild and swiftly handled a spy. If it's him, I should be able to trust him with this. After a brief pause, Ryu Jiguang's demeanor shifted. His initial hesitation faded, replaced by quiet determination. He finally spoke, his voice carrying an unusual weight. Actually, he admitted, the reason I decided to work with the Shaolin wasn't just for business. There was another, far greater reason. He met Mujin's gaze with a steady resolve. That's why I asked to meet with you now. Taking a deep breath, he prepared to reveal the truth. The second reason I chose to align with the Shaolin is the scene shifted to before the clinic was founded, Ryu Jiguang's office. On his desk was the overall report for Hubei Province's Wuhan County. Garment purchase, Gansu Province receipt. The overall report for Gansu Province's Tianshui County. And the overall report for Shaanxi Province's Hejin County. As he got through all of them and reached the last one, he thought, after I'm done with this, I'll be done with today's work. But then he noticed something strange. Using a Chinese abacus, he calculated the figures again, verifying his suspicions. He thought, the purchase report of the Mianyang branch aligns with the received goods in the report of Shaanxi Province's Hanzhong County as expected. But one item is being sold at an especially higher price than the market rate. What is this? Don't tell me. He immediately called for Chief Administrator Yang and started writing something at his desk. Yang promptly responded, yes, guild leader. Ryu Jiguang handed him letters saying, I want you to send the Azure Gold Squad to the Mianyang branch and Hanzhong branch. I'll write the details in a letter, so make sure that they only open it after they arrive. Yang nodded. Yes, sir. In the present, Ryu Jiguang said to Mujin, I can tell it's dangerous because of the decades I have trained my senses running the Heavenly Merchant Guild. The movements of our branches seem suspicious. That's why I decided to work with Shaolin, to keep them in check. Up until now, based on my experience and instincts, I had sensed that something was slightly out of place. Then you came and helped us catch a hidden spy. I had wanted to believe that the main branch I oversee had no issues, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case. We almost ran into huge trouble, but you prevented it for us. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Mujin thought, as expected, there's no need to doubt the current merchant guild leader. The problem was spies like Hong So-hee. He then said, I simply did what was supposed to be done. That aside, you mentioned that other branches have problems. Mujin hesitated. I want to go there right away, but I don't feel safe doing that since I have no idea when the Heavenly Merchant Guild's main branch might fall. I need to come up with some kind of countermeasure for it. Let's think. If I don't completely solve this matter, no one will know what kind of disaster will befall the Heavenly Merchant Guild and the whole world of Shaolin Chronicles. I got rid of the first problem, which was Hong So-hee. The next villain would be Lady Sealwa. Thinking about that, Mujin asked, May I know what happened to Lady Sealwa? Ryu Jiguang replied. Since Hong So-hee was able to steal information while she was Sealwa's servant, we also investigated Sealwa. Mujin asked, Were they in cahoots together? Ryu Jiguang shook his head. Not at all. But Sealwa is under room confinement now. I can't believe she didn't even know her own servant was scheming against our merchant guild. That deserves to be punished. Mujin thought. Yeah, I guess, Ryu Jiguang then asked. But is there a problem? Why are you suddenly asking about Sealwa? Mujin replied. There's something I'd like to propose to Lady Sealwa. Have you noticed a problem with our clinic facility? I realized it after an incident that happened recently. As he was treating a patient at the clinic, a man had asked, Monk Mujin, I have a question. Does this place not accept female patients? Since I've come here for treatments a few times, I naturally talked about it with my wife. She has some problems with her back as well, so she'd also like to receive treatment here. Mujin thought back to that moment. Come to think of it, we've only accepted male patients so far. Even in the modern world, for a male fitness trainer or Pilates instructor, there are always issues since there's usually a lot of physical contact. But in this martial arts world, they take the idea that men and women should not sit together after the age of 7 very seriously. It's not a place where people can fool around or refuse to listen to their seniors. In the case of Yungahee's treatment, because she treated me like her grandson, she was able to undergo treatment without any problems. But for me to personally treat a woman of high status who can afford luxurious treatment, Mujin considered the issue further. Even if I perform treatments without directly touching the patient, some women might still complain to their fathers or husbands. Even if I explain that physical contact is necessary for the muscle lengthening technique, they wouldn't listen to me. I don't even want to imagine what could happen if that were to occur. After thinking it through, Mujin said, I fear something along those lines could happen. Ryu Jiguang nodded. Even though you're a Buddhist, there will still be women who feel uncomfortable with a man treating them. At this rate, It's true that it would be difficult for the clinic to accept female patients. That's indeed a huge problem. But you said you realized something just now. May I ask if you found a solution for it? Mujin answered. Yes, I did. The solution would be to ask Lady Siwa to learn my treatment methods. That way, she can treat female patients instead of me. I heard that even though she's under room confinement, she can still take lessons. If we do that, then we'll be able to easily resolve the clinic's problem. And most importantly, since Lady Siwa is your daughter, we won't need to worry about her leaking information about my techniques to the outside world. This technique will only belong to the Heavenly Merchant Guild, among the top 5 merchant guilds in the world. His suggestion took Ryu Jiguang by surprise. Then, a smirk formed on his lips before he burst into laughter, thinking, Monk Mujin is so unpredictable. Then Ryu Jiguang called out, Chief Administrator Yang, are you outside? Yang immediately responded, Yes, sir. Ryu Jiguang said, Ask Siwa to come here. Sometime later as Siwa arrived, Ryu Jiguang looked at her and said, You must hate me for confining you to your room. Siwa replied, Father, I don't blame you for that. Ryu Jiguang continued, Since you've been to the clinic a few times, you know what kind of work Monk Mujin does, right? Siwa nodded. Yes, I do. Ryu Jiguang turned to Monk Mujin. Please take over. Mujin stood from his seat. Yes, Merchant Guild Leader. He then walked towards Siwa and said, Lady Siwa, after discussing with your father, I'd like to propose something to you. Would you be willing to learn my treatment methods and exercises and then help out with female patients? Siwa looked startled. That came out of nowhere. I'm still under confinement. How could I do that? Mujin reassured her. I'm not asking you to help the clinic immediately. First, I'll need to teach you my treatment methods during your confinement. You've watched how I do it every time you visit, haven't you? I think you'll be able to learn it easily. Hearing this, Siwa began to tremble. But then, as she looked at Mujin, she saw the same gentle smile she remembered from the time they had first met, when he had saved her at Shaolin Temple Mountain. Mujin spoke again, his voice soft and reassuring. It's all right. This isn't something you have to think about too seriously. You can feel free to reject me. Would you like to help us? Seal was trembling stopped as she realized. This monk before her was the same one who had saved her back then. Mujin smiled. You can just think of it as us playing together like we did back then. Some time later, Siwa retreated to a quiet room, seeking solitude to gather her thoughts. As she sat there, reflecting on everything that had happened, Mujin's words from earlier echoed in her mind. Aren't you going to treat the sick and save the world? I'll stay by your side to help, so that you can accomplish that. A wave of doubt washed over her as she lowered her gaze. She let out a soft sigh and whispered to herself, Can I really do it? I've only been to the clinic a handful of times and merely observed what was going on. If something goes wrong, what if I make a mistake? What should I do? Meanwhile, outside the room, her father, Ryu Jiguang, happened to overhear her anxious murmuring. Concerned, he turned to Mujin and asked in a serious tone, While those are noble intentions, are you certain this is the right decision? I can't help but feel that this might be too overwhelming for Siwa to handle right now. Mujin, however, remained confident. He gave a knowing smile and replied, She's your daughter, isn't she? She's more than capable of handling this. Deep down, he thought to himself, This is actually the perfect opportunity. Right now, Ryu Siwa is struggling with self-doubt, largely because of how Hong So-hee manipulated her, fattening her up and gaslighting her into losing confidence in herself. But if she learns about exercise, its principles, and how to apply them, she'll gain a sense of achievement and start regaining her confidence. And besides, it wouldn't be a bad thing for me to get closer to the daughter of a wealthy family. On the first day of her education, Mujin started by teaching Siwa the fundamental theories behind physical training and the changes the body undergoes when engaging in proper exercise. He also introduced concepts that were not typically practiced in Shaolin, such as meat consumption for protein, something she had never considered before. Alongside that, he explained the importance of a balanced diet, breaking down various nutrients and their effects on the body. Understanding that she was new to all of this, Mujin took extra care to simplify complex medical and fitness terminology, making sure the concepts were easy to grasp. He also used engaging analogies to help her visualize the ideas more clearly. To his surprise, Siwa absorbed the information remarkably fast, processing it with an eagerness he hadn't expected. At one point, as they were discussing nutrition, Siwa suddenly recalled something from their past encounter. Her expression shifted as she looked at Mujin and said, So, that's why you were eating meat back then. She was referring to the time they had met on the mountain. Mujin's face stiffened slightly. He waved a hand dismissively and muttered, "Please just forget about that." By the 5th day, Mujin had moved on to teaching her stretching techniques and Pilates exercises. Although she was still technically under confinement, her father allowed her to leave the estate for educational purposes. This led them to visit the clinic where she could gain hands-on experience. To assist with her training, Yoon-gi joined them, offering herself as a practice subject for Seolwa to work on. Since Mujin couldn't physically guide Seolwa by touching her himself, Gahi stepped in to help demonstrate certain techniques. At first, Seolwa was visibly nervous, her hands hovering uncertainly before making contact. But as soon as she followed Mujin's instructions and applied what she had learned, her movements became more precise and fluid. She quickly grasped the principles behind postural therapy and acupressure, steadily improving with each session. Seeing her abilities develop so rapidly, Mujin thought, once she starts receiving recognition for her skills, the confidence she gains will be beyond words. By the 9th day, something about Seolwa had changed. Her eyes no longer held the same hesitation they once did. It was as if she had discovered a new purpose, one that was no longer solely about fulfilling expectations from the merchant guild or her father. This time, it seemed like she was doing it for herself. Observing this shift, Mujin speculated, "I think I have an idea of what her goal might be, but I shouldn't assume. Talking about a woman's weight is a delicate matter, after all. For now, I'll just keep watching and step in only when necessary." His expression darkened slightly as he thought about the injustice she had endured. She's been manipulated all this time by a spy who intentionally led her down this path. That's what caused her to gain so much weight in the first place. I suggested personal training under the guise of education, and not once did she refuse it. If anything, she's shown an unwavering determination to improve. She's serious about this. I just hope she achieves the results she's hoping for. I want to see a Ryu Seolwa of strength and resolve, not the version I read about in the novel. By the 20th day, Seolwa had mastered most of the stretching and Pilates techniques Mujin had taught her. Although she had learned fewer techniques compared to what he had previously taught Biobji, she had achieved remarkable stability in her form. Now, she was capable of incorporating them into her daily routine. Her dedication was evident. She never slacked off, not even once. For someone aspiring to be a professional trainer, that was an excellent start. Given that she was still in her growing years, as long as she continued to push forward and refused to give up, she would succeed in losing weight. Mujin reflected, even for adults, dieting and fitness regimens can be brutal. Yet despite how timid she was in the beginning, she's undergone a complete transformation. That alone is incredible, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. Standing at a distance, her father, Ryu Jiguang, silently observed his daughter, seeing how different she had become. How she had gone from being withdrawn and depressed to someone driven and focused. He murmured to himself, "I can't believe she's changed this much. She's nothing like how she was before." The sight of her determination moved him deeply. So much so that, in a rare display of emotion, he discreetly handed Mujin a sum of emergency funds, ensuring that his senior officials wouldn't notice. At first, Mujin hesitated and declined, his expression unreadable. "Are you trying to buy me with money? Do you think I would accept such an offer so easily?" But faced with the sheer amount he was being offered, resisting became increasingly difficult. In the end, he accepted it, though not without a lingering thought in the back of his mind. One day, I'll use this money to buy myself some protein to eat. Training her had gone smoothly, but that was only a step toward my larger objectives. Mujin turned to Ryu Jiguang and said, "Merchant Guild Leader, I believe she's ready." Ryu Jiguang raised an eyebrow. "You think so too?" Mujin nodded. "I've been considering expanding our operations to the countryside. You don't want the clinics to be limited to Dangfeng County, do you? If we establish additional branches, we can provide medical aid to more people and, in the process, generate additional revenue. I mean, contribute to the well-being of even more individuals." Yet beneath those words, Mujin harbored another thought. This expansion will also give us an opportunity to investigate the suspicious activities of certain countryside branches. Ryu Jiguang pondered for a moment before asking, "Where do you plan to establish the first branch?" "In Jiangxi province, specifically in Nanchong," Mujin answered confidently. Ryu Jiguang appeared intrigued. "Nanchong? Why there? Luoyang or Zhengzhou are much closer options." Mujin explained, "The Shaolin Temple holds significant influence in Dangfeng County, making expansion into nearby regions relatively easy. However, if we push outward too aggressively, other sects will start to raise complaints. That's why my target is a neutral area, Nanchong. It's an unclaimed territory, untouched by any major faction. If we successfully establish a branch there, we'll be able to extend our reach and help even more people in the future. Ryu Jiguang leaned back, impressed. I didn't realize you had such a strong grasp of territorial dynamics. That's quite insightful. But you do understand that conducting business in Nanchong won't be easy. Mujin acknowledged the challenge. It's still preferable to setting up shop in a region dominated by a rival group. And if you look at the map, Nanchong is the closest neutral area to us. Though his reasoning was logical, Mujin's true motive lay elsewhere. Internally, he reflected, capturing a minor spy like Hong, so he won't be enough to change the fate of the Heavenly Merchant Guild. The real mastermind remains hidden. According to my knowledge, in the near future, Nanchong will fall under the control of an unorthodox faction, the Tyrant Blade faction. This faction serves as the enforcer of the corrupt Heavenly Merchant Guild, overseeing illicit activities such as drug production and human trafficking. These dark dealings generate the majority of the guild's profits, ultimately leading them down a path of no return. If I want to alter the course of history, I need to act now. I must uncover their plans before they take root. Later, while discussing the expansion with Hyun Myung, the topic of leadership arose. Hyun Myung asked, I understand why you want to go there personally, but who will manage things here in your absence? The Heavenly Merchant Guild won't simply sit idly by. Mujin responded, Monk Biab Jian is more than capable. He's been assisting my grandfather all this time, which has prevented him from showcasing his true abilities. But now, he's more proficient in my techniques than even I am. Grandfather has always felt indebted to him for his unwavering support. This is a perfect opportunity for Monk Biab Jian to take charge and prove himself. Still, Mujin's true thought was, this arrangement allows me to travel to Nanchong alone. Maybe I can even treat myself to some good meat while I'm there. His excitement, however, was short-lived. Hyun Myung interjected, that region is too distant for you to travel alone. Fortunately, I have the perfect companion in mind. Mujin's plan was instantly derailed. He later found out that Abbot Hyun Chun had been informed of their discussion and had given his approval with a broad smile. Grandfather, too, had readily agreed to the arrangement. In the end, Mujin was left with no choice but to take Monk Biab Jian along. Despite the unexpected addition to his journey, Mujin meticulously planned every detail of the expansion, drawing from his past experiences as a gym owner when he was still Choi Kang-hyuk. With most preparations falling into place without issue, he turned his attention to his departure. That evening, after concluding his training session with Sealwa, Mujin announced, that's all for today. Sealwa bowed respectfully. Thank you, Monk Mujin. Curious about her progress, Mujin asked, how did you find the muscle lengthening technique class? I apologize if my teaching wasn't up to standard. Sealwa quickly reassured him. Not at all. You taught exceptionally well. Thanks to your guidance, I was able to use my time effectively during my house confinement. After a brief pause, she hesitantly asked, are you leaving tomorrow? To Nanchong? Mujin nodded. Yes, we'll be departing early in the morning. I initially thought I would remain in Hunan after leaving the Shaolin Temple, but fate seems to have other plans. Sealwa's expression darkened as thoughts weighed on her mind. We've only just grown close, and now he's leaving already. He saved me when I was a child, and now he's saved the Merchant Guild. I haven't even had the chance to properly thank him. People around me always seem to leave. It's hard to form bonds when they all eventually disappear. Noticing the shift in her demeanor, Mujin gently called her name, pulling her from her thoughts. Flashing a reassuring smile, he said, I'm only going on a business trip. I'll return once my work there is complete. In the meantime, you'd better keep training diligently. When I come back, I'll be testing your progress, so be prepared. I won't be going easy on you. Understood. Sealwa gave a firm nod, sealing her promise to continue training. With that, Mujin had provided her with the final push of motivation she needed. Now that everything was set, the journey to Nanchong was about to begin. Early the next morning, as they set off on their travels, Mujin turned to the coachman and asked, how long will it take to reach Nanchong? The coachman replied, if all goes smoothly, we should arrive in approximately 4 days. Mujin nodded. Understood. We'll be counting on you. The coachman assured him, rest easy. I'll get you there safely. As the journey commenced, Mujin's mind remained preoccupied. Now that Hong So-hee has been eliminated, the enemy organization will undoubtedly take action. If possible, I want to confront the Tyrant Blade faction directly and cross paths with that individual. Ryu Sealho, the second son of Ryu Jiguang. According to Gae Kyung's novel, Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles, he will play a pivotal role. Meanwhile, In a distant office, Ryu Sealho was meticulously reviewing a stack of documents when a servant entered and respectfully informed him. Branch leader, guests from the Merchant Guild Leaders faction are en route to see you. Ryu Sealho's gaze sharpened. From main guild? What kind of guests? The servant replied. They are from the Shaolin Temple. Upon hearing those words, Ryu Sealho immediately turned his head, his crimson eyes narrowing as he focused intently on the messenger. The scene shifted back to Mujin, who was seated inside a carriage as it made its way toward its destination. The rhythmic clatter of horse hooves filled the air, and the gentle swaying of the carriage signaled that they were nearing their stop. The coachman, holding the reins firmly, turned his head slightly and addressed Mujin in a respectful tone. Blessed monk, will be arriving shortly. Mujin's gaze shifted towards the horizon, his eyes narrowing as he spotted a city emerging in the distance. His voice carried a note of curiosity as he asked, "That place we see ahead, is that Nanchong?" The coachman gave a small nod and responded, "Yes, please prepare to disembark." Mujin took another look at the approaching cityscape, its bustling energy already palpable from afar. He leaned slightly to the side, glancing nervously into the dimly lit interior of the carriage. As his fingers absent-mindedly tapped against the wooden seat, a thought crossed his mind. That's my second place of business, Nanchong. It would have been better if I had taken this trip alone. Pushing those thoughts aside, Mujin straightened up and spoke. "We've arrived. Please wake up." Just as the words left his lips, a sudden, sharp impact landed on his head. The dull thud echoed inside the carriage, and pain shot through his skull. Startled, he clutched his head and looked up to see the culprit, a wooden stick held in the firm grip of an old man. "You little brat," a gruff voice snapped at him. "Did you not hear what the coachman just said? He clearly told us, we'll be arriving shortly, didn't he?" The one wielding the stick was none other than Hwan, the head of the Demon Slayer's order. Unlike Mujin, who sat upright, Hwan was sprawled across the floor of the carriage, lazily resting as if the cramped space were a bed meant for him alone. His voice carried an unmistakable irritation as he continued. "I told you to wake me up only when we have actually arrived. Do you not understand words, or are you just deaf?" Mujin, still rubbing the sore spot where the stick had landed, shouted back in frustration. "No one would understand what you mean if you say it like that." Hwan yawned, stretching his arms before rolling over dismissively. "In any case, I'm going back to sleep," he muttered. Mujin clenched his jaw, his teeth grinding together as he tried to contain his irritation. Why did it have to be this old man? He thought, barely restraining himself from kicking Hwan out of the carriage. The scene shifted to a discussion that had taken place 2 days prior, within the halls of the Heavenly Merchant Guild. Mujin stood before Hyun Myung, his brows furrowed in disbelief. "What? You want me to travel with Monk Hwan?" he asked, his tone betraying his reluctance. Hyun Myung nodded and explained, "Yes. You might not be aware, but in the vicinity of Nanchong, there have been rumors, whispers about underworld gangs and unorthodox martial groups making occasional appearances. While these are merely rumors, I'm not comfortable sending you there alone. That's why I'm considering asking Hwan to accompany you. He has extensive knowledge about unorthodox groups, and it's always safer to take extra precautions. Nothing bad will come from being careful." Back in the present, Mujin exhaled a heavy sigh as he leaned slightly against the carriage wall. His fingers drummed against the wood as he mulled over the situation. "This is actually good. My main goal on this trip is to deal with the Tyrant Blade faction, a group that does the dirty work of the corrupted Heavenly Merchant Guild. That means there will be fighting. Having someone as strong as Hwan around definitely puts me at ease." But then a troubling thought crept in. Can I really depend on him? Meanwhile, just as the carriage rolled forward, Hwan's ears twitched slightly. Though his eyes remained closed, his other senses remained sharp. He picked up on a subtle but distinct sound coming from a distance. The corners of his lips curled into an eager grin as an amused thought crossed his mind. Just as I thought, something fun's about to happen. His fingers instinctively tightened around the wooden stick in his grasp. To think those little rats have come out to meet us already. This trip won't be a boring one after all. At that moment, hidden within the thick canopy of trees overlooking the road, 2 figures clad in dark robes observed the carriage. Their blood-red eyes gleamed ominously from the shadows, locked onto their target. The scene shifted once again, this time to the interior of the Heavenly Merchant Guild's Nanchong branch. Within a private chamber, Ryu Sealho, the second son of Ryu Jiguang and the branch leader of the guild, sat in quiet contemplation. Turning to a subordinate standing before him, he asked in a calm but firm tone, So, have you confirmed it? A man dressed in black, the same one who had been watching Mujin's carriage earlier, took a seat across from him. With a nod, he replied, "Yes, we've confirmed that they've arrived by horse-drawn carriage." Ryu Sealho narrowed his eyes. "The Shaolin disciples have come here?" Before he could inquire further, a sharp knock echoed through the room. "Branch leader, the guests of the merchant guild leader are here." Ryu Sealho barely spared a glance at his hidden subordinate before giving him a curt signal. "Hide," he ordered, then turned his attention back to the servant. "Let them in." The doors swung open, and Mujin entered the chamber. As he stepped inside, his gaze subtly swept across the room, his sharp instincts tingling. "There's a presence here, something faint. Am I overthinking things?" Pushing the thought aside, he turned to face Ryu Sealho and greeted him with a polite nod. "Nice to meet you. I am Mujin, a third-class disciple of Shaolin." Ryu Sealho responded with a measured smile. "I am Ryu Sealho, the branch leader of the Heavenly Merchant Guild's Nanchong branch. It must have been exhausting for you to make such a long journey. I've already received a letter from the Merchant Guild leader, so I have a rough understanding of the situation. Our Nanchong branch intends to commission a workshop to craft the tools your clinic requires. If you need anything else, you may speak to the chief supervisor." Mujin raised an eyebrow. "Pardon?" Ryu Sealho's tone turned dismissive. "Today is your first day here, so I made time for you. But as the branch leader, I have a great deal of work to attend to." Mujin's expression remained neutral, but internally, he scoffed. "So that's how you want to play it? How rude, befitting for a future villain." With a polite but insincere smile, he said, "May I take my leave now, branch leader?" Ryu Sealho gave a small nod. "It'd be nice if you did. I have a lot of work to do. Please take your leave." Without hesitation, Mujin turned and exited the office. As soon as the door shut behind him, the black-clad figure reappeared before Ryu Sealho. Ryu Sealho smirked. Even though he wasn't entirely sure, "I can't believe he managed to sense your presence." The figure nodded. "He's certainly no ordinary monk." Ryu Sealho leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together. "Underestimating him could disrupt our plans. Father, the Merchant Guild leader, must have had a reason for praising him so highly. I suppose I'll have to test it myself." The figure tilted his head. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" Ryu Sealho's lips curled into a knowing smile. "I just recalled an incident where a large number of Shaolin Outer Sect disciples left. The world is a place that reacts sensitively to rumors, as long as they sound interesting. Spread that rumor." The figure bowed. "Yes, sir." As the scene shifted back to Mujin, he was busy unloading supplies from the carriage with the assistance of a local disciple. The two worked efficiently, transferring various packages and equipment into the temple in the area. Wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead, Mujin turned to his helper and expressed his gratitude. "Thank you so much for helping with the luggage. I really appreciate it." His helper, a man named Mak Jaihyok, offered a warm smile in response. He was an outer sect disciple under the Jiangxi Buddha, 5th sect leader. "I was also once a Shaolin disciple," he revealed. "We should all help each other out whenever we can. When I was still a disciple, my Buddhist name was Hai Shin." Mujin took a moment to reflect on this. He had been under the impression that monk Hyun Myung was deeply concerned about the security of Nanchong. Yet, from what he had seen so far, the Buddha 5th sect leader and his disciples appeared to be kind and welcoming. It was a comforting realization. As Mak Jaihyok glanced over the various tools Mujin had brought with him, his curiosity was piqued. "By the way, can these fancy-looking things really help the world?" Mujin nodded firmly. "These are medical treatment tools that have already provided a great deal of aid to countless people. We can't be the only ones benefiting from something so valuable. That's precisely why we came here, to share them with those in need." Before their conversation could continue, a sudden knock on the door broke the moment. A voice called out from outside. "Is the Buddha 5th sect leader in there? Is anyone inside?" Both Mujin and Mak Jaihyok exchanged puzzled looks before turning their attention toward the door. Wondering who could be calling upon them so urgently, Mak Jaihyok took the initiative to approach the gate. "Please excuse me for a moment," he said. "It seems we have an unexpected visitor." As he pulled the door open, his eyes widened at the sight before him. A large group of people had gathered just outside, their expressions tense and confrontational. Immediately, he addressed them. "Why are there so many of you here? What is the matter?" From within the crowd, someone spoke up in a sharp tone. "We have something to say to the person who came from Shaolin. We've heard some troubling rumors." Mak Jaihyok's brows furrowed. "What rumors?" he asked cautiously. Mujin, observing the assembled individuals, quickly assessed the situation. These people, they seem to be representatives of a local sections, but they don't appear particularly strong. Just then, an older man with silver-white hair stepped forward. His presence commanded attention. This was none other than Kong Tai-gu, the leader of the Jiangxi Tai sword sect. His voice carried a stern edge as he demanded, "Is it true that the noble Shaolin disciples, who have supposedly cut off all worldly desires, are attempting to conduct business using medical techniques?" His accusation stirred murmurs of discontent among the onlookers. Soon, others joined in, voicing their displeasure. The Shaolin Temple is getting involved in business now. Is it because you're struggling financially after so many outer sect disciples left? I thought Shaolin monks were above such things. Never imagined they'd be corrupted by money. Mak Jaihyok, remaining composed, responded calmly. As you can see, this place is intended to serve as a clinic. It exists solely to provide medical treatment for those who are suffering, but the dissenters were unmoved. "Then do it for free," one of them shouted. "Even if you monks are struggling financially, how can the Shaolin Temple justify expanding its influence under the guise of business? You should return to your mountain at once." Mujin clenched his fists. His patience was wearing thin. Internally, he seethed. These fools are really overstepping their bounds. Stepping forward, he interjected, his voice unwavering. "Pardon me for interrupting your discussion, but we, the Shaolin disciples, have only just arrived here. We were in the middle of unloading our supplies. Tell me, how did you know that we intended to use medical techniques?" His words cast a brief silence over the crowd. Individuals exchanged uncertain glances before one of them hesitantly spoke up. "Didn't you say it yourself?" "No," another voice countered. "I heard it from the Tai Sword Sect leader." Kong Tai-gu, Tai Sword Sect leader, now under scrutiny, simply crossed his arms. "Only heard about it through rumors." Mujin's eyes narrowed. So that's how it is, he thought. The only person capable of rallying all these minor sects in one place, it has to be Ryu Sealho. That cunning fox. He's trying to manipulate public opinion against me. Aloud, Mujin declared, "I think I understand why you've gathered here. Let me make something clear. I traveled a great distance, fully prepared to dedicate myself to helping others. My goal is to aid the people of this city. So to hear ridiculous accusations like Shaolin has become obsessed with money is something we fully anticipated." Kong Tai-gu remained unmoved. "Even so," Mujin pressed on, "even so, are you truly saying you don't want the people of Nanchong to have access to better healthcare?" Kong Tai-gu scoffed. "That claim is far-fetched." Mujin smirked. "Far-fetched? Let's be honest here. Why would the Shaolin Temple need your permission to open a clinic? Unless, of course, there's another reason behind your opposition. Do you really take us for fools?" His gaze sharpened. "You're all just Ryu Sealho's pawns." Just then, a younger man stepped forward, his expression filled with irritation. "I can't listen to this any longer. Why does a mere young monk from Shaolin talk so much? Father, allow me to deal with this." This was Kong Jiawan, the eldest son of the Tai Sword Sect leader. With a smug grin, he issued a challenge. "I'll personally teach you the proper mindset a Shaolin disciple should have. Let's settle this the orthodox way, with a duel." The gathered crowd erupted into cheers of approval, their excitement palpable. Mujin smirked, cracking his knuckles. "Judging by their reaction, that means everyone agrees, right? Fine, then." He shifted into his fighting stance, his gaze unwavering. "Don't just stand there. Come me already." Some time later, as the duel between Kong Jiawan and Mujin commenced, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The spectators watched with bated breath, their eyes locked onto the two warriors. Kong Jiawan, his body covered in bruises and cuts, hesitated to continue the fight. His breathing was ragged, and his muscles trembled from exhaustion. The crowd, unimpressed by his reluctance, began shouting at him. "Why aren't you giving it your all?" Someone jeered. Gritting his teeth, Kong Jiawan's thoughts raced. Is he really just a teenager? He wondered. I heard he was only a third-class disciple. How did he manage to survive Dangfeng County? There must be a reason. But how is he so strong? Before he could gather himself, Mujin rushed forward again with blistering speed. Kong Jiawan reacted instinctively, lifting his leg to deliver a swift kick. However, Mujin dodged it effortlessly, his movements fluid and precise. There it is again, that strange technique. Kong Jiawan thought, his mind struggling to comprehend Mujin's unpredictable footwork. In a split second, Mujin seized the opportunity. He grabbed Kong Jiawan's extended leg with one hand while simultaneously gripping his robe. With a swift, calculated motion, he executed a powerful leg hook, sending Kong Jiawan crashing onto the hard ground. The impact rattled his body, and as he lay there, blood trickled from his forehead, mixing with the dust beneath him. His limbs felt heavy, his mind clouded by fatigue. Mujin stood over him and scoffed. "Your attack was so predictable that even a child could have dodged it," he remarked coldly. "I've won. Don't make any more trouble. And don't even think about going back on your word. Act like an orthodox martial artist should." Meanwhile, perched atop a nearby rooftop, Hwan observed the fight with mild amusement. Watching Mujin's win, he muttered under his breath, "I didn't even have to step in. That was reckless, but it looks like things worked out in the end." He let out a small sigh, then shook his head. But how foolish. He's already left a terrible first impression on the locals. From the very start, he's done nothing but make enemies here. "Kid, what's your next move?" As night fell, the streets of Nanchong were bustling with life. Lanterns cast a warm glow over the roads, illuminating the throngs of people who moved about, engaged in lively conversation. Dressed in a disguise, Mujin blended seamlessly into the crowd, his steps careful and deliberate. His altered appearance kept him from drawing unwanted attention, at least from those who weren't particularly observant. A small group of women nearby caught sight of him and began whispering among themselves. "My, he's so handsome," one of them gushed, her eyes sparkling. "Look at his physique," another murmured. "Even through his clothes, you can see how toned his muscles are. And that hair so thick and flowing." The third one giggled and called out playfully, "Handsome man, want to have some fun tonight?" "Oh my, don't be so shy." Mujin sighed inwardly. "I can't believe I'm actually wearing a wig. Damn, that Shaolin Temple. If not for this disguise, everyone would immediately recognize that I'm a monk." His gaze swept over the streets as he continued walking. In this era, the Tyrant Blade faction hasn't fully seized control of Nanchong yet. I need to gather every scrap of information on them, no matter how insignificant it may seem. As he passed by an inn, the rich aroma of roasted meat filled the air, stopping him in his tracks. The scent was intoxicating, making his stomach tighten in protest. His gaze shifted towards the entrance, where the inviting glow of lanterns illuminated the faces of diners indulging in hearty meals. "I can't go in there now," he reminded himself, clenching his fists. "I have to stay focused on my mission. That's why I went through the trouble of disguising myself in the first place." Sweat formed on his brow as he struggled to suppress his desires. "Calm down," he told himself. "My priority is tracking down the Tyrant Blade faction. I need to find Ryu Sealho and the other villains and deliver a devastating blow to them." But his stomach twisted with hunger. "For the past few months, the only protein I've had has come from mushrooms and tofu." Shaking his head vigorously, he scolded himself. "No, Mujin, snap out of it. I need to focus on gathering information, not meat." At that precise moment, a deep, rumbling sound echoed through the street. Mujin froze. People around him stopped and turned their heads. "I think I just heard thunder," one man said, looking up at the sky. "No," another man whispered. That sound came from that young man's stomach. A third person hushed them. "Sure, how can you be so tactless?" Mujin's face burned with embarrassment. Some time later, he finally gave in and entered the inn. As soon as he sat down, he ordered several meat dishes and wasted no time devouring them. "Nothing is more important than filling your stomach first," he murmured between bites, his mouth full. "This is the perfect time to use the money I received as a gift. It's been ages since I've had high-quality protein. The last time I had a proper meal was during the wall-facing punishment." He stuffed more food into his mouth. "I don't know when I'll get another chance to eat like this, so I need to take full advantage of it." Taking a deep breath, he admired the dish in front of him. "Dompa pork? Grandpa used to love this stuff. The smell alone is divine. All right, little pork belly. I'll make sure you're reborn as strength within my body." Lost in his thoughts and his meal, Mujin remained unaware that he was being watched. From a nearby window, Hwan sat comfortably, observing the scene with an amused expression. His eyes gleamed with mischief as he watching Mujin eat like a starving man. Mujin, mid-bite, suddenly felt a strange sensation, an eerie sense of being watched. He glanced up and met Hwan's gaze. The monk was smiling directly at him. Mujin's body tensed. His chopsticks clattered against the plate as shock coursed through him. He felt his stomach sink, his mind scrambling for a way to explain himself. Hwan let out a low chuckle and said, "Well, I never expected to run into a fellow monk here. That's quite the feast you have in front of you. Are you enjoying yourself?" His smile widened as he continued. "So, you're the one who corrupted Grandmaster Hyunguang? Is that why you fought so hard to stay in Nanchong? I saw the way you went after that big oaf earlier." eyes full of fire. Quite the passionate little monk, aren't you? Mujin swallowed hard, his mind racing. If I play this right, this could be my chance to take down the Tyrant Blade faction. Hwan stood from his perch and gracefully made his way toward Mujin's table. With a smirk, he said, "Now then, as the price for me turning a blind eye to this, you'll be paying for both of our meals." Sometime later, as Mujin continued explaining the situation, more liquor bottles arrived at their table, the wooden cups clinking softly as the waiter placed them down. Hwan leaned back slightly, crossing his arms as he summarized. "So, Ryu Jiguang, the leader of the Heavenly Merchant Guild, informed you that an underground organization has embedded itself in Nanchong. They've been committing unspeakable crimes, kidnapping children and women, selling them off like cattle. In response, you disguised yourself, entered this establishment, and ordered food in hopes of gathering intelligence on them. Is that correct?" Mujin gave a firm nod. "Yes, that's right." Hwan lifted his cup, taking a slow sip of his liquor before exhaling. "I see. The name of that organization is the Tyrant Blade faction." Hearing those words, Mujin couldn't help but glance at the liquor in Hwan's hand. A fleeting thought crossed his mind. I want to drink liquor too, but he quickly dismissed it. Hwan's lips curled into a sinister grin as he set his cup down. "If what you're saying is true, then this might be a good opportunity for me. It's been a while since I've had a chance to truly stretch my muscles." He then leaned back slightly, narrowing his eyes as his thoughts continued. "There's a strong chance that the people watching us earlier belonged to the Tyrant Blade faction. But what's strange is, even after detecting my energy, they chose to do nothing. They didn't react at all, even when faced with my anti-demon Buddha energy. Does that mean they're still rational enough to avoid unnecessary conflict?" Just then, Hwan suddenly called out, "Waiter!" A man hurried over saying, "Yes, sir." Hwan casually lifted a silver niang between his fingers. Mujin's gaze immediately locked onto the coin, his expression shifting. "Wait, that's my silver niang. I only took them out for a moment. When did he take one?" Hwan, unfazed by Mujin's silent frustration, spoke smoothly. "Do you happen to know anything about a group called the Tyrant Blade faction? If you have any information, tell me now, and I'll make sure you receive another one of these." He flipped the silver niang in his hand, letting the light glint off it enticingly. Some time later, after gathering information from the waiter, Mujin and Hwan arrived at the headquarters of the Black Death faction. The waiter had told them, "I've never heard of the Tyrant Blade faction, but there is a notorious underworld syndicate here in Nanchong known as the Black Death faction. They've been operating for a long time, dealing in all sorts of shady business. If any group could be tied to the Tyrant Blade faction, it would be them." Now, standing amidst the aftermath of battle, the scent of blood and sweat thick in the air, Mujin surveyed the unconscious bodies of their defeated foes. With a deep sigh, he muttered, "This isn't them. The Tyrant Blade faction isn't weak like this. These guys are nothing more than street thugs. They're even weaker than that fool Kong Jiawan, the one I fought yesterday." Hwan stepped forward and nonchalantly slapped one of the unconscious men across the face. The man stirred, groaning as he slowly regained consciousness, only to find himself being yanked up by the collar. Hwan's voice was cold and sharp as he demanded, "I doubt you know much about the Tyrant Blade faction, but tell me, are there any up-and-coming underworld groups that could pose a threat to your faction? Have you noticed any organizations bringing in outsiders?" His grip tightened. "If I don't hear an answer I like, I'll boil you alive." Panic flooded the man's face. His breath came in short gasps as he stammered. "There's a place. We've seen several unfamiliar faces there recently. A lot of people go in, but almost no one ever comes out. We never dared to interfere with that place recklessly." Hwan mused before asking, "Do you know its location?" The man trembled, thoughts racing in his head. "I'll tell them everything. Please, just spare me." Mujin and Hwan exchanged glances. A silent understanding passed between them. "We found them." As soon as the man provided the necessary details, Hwan turned on his heel and immediately began moving toward the location without hesitation. Mujin, sensing the recklessness of the decision, quickly called out, "Wait, going in with just the two of us could be dangerous. Let's contact the rest of the monks and go together." Hwan paused only briefly before turning his head slightly. "You want to call for reinforcements?" he scoffed. "I don't think that's necessary." He then lifted his hand and gestured toward the nearby rooftops. "I think my guys are more than enough already." Mujin's eyes widened as he turned and saw them, silhouettes perched on the rooftops, blending seamlessly with the shadows. Realization dawned upon him. "So the presences I felt earlier, they were from the Demon Extermination Squad? When did they start following us?" Hwan chuckled. "They'll show up wherever I am or wherever the stench of the demonic cult lingers. Looks like the higher-ups didn't just send me to handle this mission. They really are obsessed with me. Then, raising his voice, he issued the command. All of you heard me, right? Demon Extermination Squad, move out. The Tyrant Blade faction was a notorious unorthodox group that played a major role in the novel Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles, written by author G.A. Kyung. Known for their ruthless and sadistic nature, they stood as one of the most feared villainous organizations within the story. Under the secret patronage of the Heavenly Merchant Guild, the faction engaged in a range of illicit activities, including drug trafficking and human smuggling. To ensure that their operations remained undetected, they deliberately chose a secluded and well-hidden base in the outskirts of a remote village, making it nearly impossible for outsiders to stumble upon their whereabouts. Meanwhile, deep within the hidden stronghold of the Tyrant Blade faction, the air was thick with tension. The leader of the faction sat upon his ornate seat, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of irritation and expectation. His voice was sharp as he addressed the subordinate kneeling before him. "You failed?" he asked, his tone devoid of patience. The subordinate kept his head low, suppressing a nervous gulp. "Yes, unfortunately," he admitted. "As per your orders, we attempted to manipulate the sects in the area to force the Shaolin disciples into retreat. However, our efforts were thwarted by a single monk, the one they call the Blessed Monk. Because of him, our plans to drive them out ended in failure." The leader narrowed his eyes, his grip tightening on the armrest of his chair. "You're telling me that all of you failed because of one young monk?" He scoffed before shaking his head in disgust. "This is exactly why I despise the Orthodox factions. Those self-righteous hypocrites can't even stand on their own without clinging to their so-called morality. They're dead weight, yet somehow you still lost to them." The subordinate hesitated for a moment before voicing his concern. "But will this really be fine? If the rumors are true and Hwan, the demon exterminator, is accompanying the blessed monk." Before he could finish his sentence, a club came to an abrupt stop just inches from his forehead. The sheer force behind it caused the air to tremble. The subordinate froze in place, barely able to breathe. His trembling eyes darted upward to see his leader gripping the heavy weapon with an ironclad grip, his expression unreadable. "So what?" The leader sneered, tilting his head slightly. "Do you think I'll lose?" He let out a low chuckle before leaning forward, eyes gleaming with a dangerous glint. "Well, I suppose Hwan has slaughtered quite a number of people. But tell me," his smirk widened, "aren't you curious as well?" The subordinate, still staring at the club hovering near his face, struggled to suppress his fear. The leader grinned, exuding confidence. "If the so-called demon exterminator and I, the great leader of the Tyrant Blade faction, were to clash at full power, then tell me, who would emerge victorious?" At that moment, outside the base, one of the guards standing watch heard a faint, unfamiliar sound. His brows furrowed as he turned in the direction of the noise, his senses on high alert. What was that sound? He thought, gripping his weapon tightly. Before he could react further, something strange appeared on the surface of the outer wall, a blazing imprint, flickering with an intense heat. As he stared in confusion, his eyes widened in horror. "It's getting hotter. Wait." Now that I look closely, his breath hitched. "Those are palm-shaped." Before he could even process the revelation, the entire wall was obliterated in an instant. A massive explosion of force sent debris flying in all directions as a devastating palm strike crashed through the barrier. The sheer power of the attack sent the guard hurtling backward, his body colliding with the ground in a violent tumble. Standing amidst the wreckage was a lone figure, Biob Y. His outstretched hand still crackled with residual energy from the R'lyeh Divine Palm Strike, the very technique that had just torn through the fortification as if it were paper. The guard, despite his injuries, forced out a desperate shout. "An enemy ambush from the east. Get everyone out here now." No sooner had he called for reinforcements than another explosion erupted from the opposite side of the base. This one was different, charged with brilliant, crackling electricity. The stunned guard barely had time to think. The other side, too? From the midst of the chaos, a voice rang out, calm yet mocking. "TSK, you're making a big fuss over nothing," Biob Gang remarked as he stood amidst flickering arcs of lightning. "That little attack wasn't enough to kill you, was it?" From within the fortress, alarmed voices began to rise. "They're all Baldies," someone shouted. "The intruders are from the Shaolin Temple. We're being ambushed from both the east and the west at the same time." Before the panic cries could spread further, another loud crack echoed through the battlefield. Hwan had stepped onto that shouting enemy's face. "You should really pay more attention," Hwan taunted, his tone dripping with condescension. We're coming in from the front too. You guys are so incompetent. At least now I understand just how low your standards are. With Eddie grinding him into the ground with a force that made the earth beneath them fracture, forming spiderweb-like cracks. Rising to his full height, Hwan scanned the battlefield with sharp eyes. Then his voice rang out, unwavering and full of authority. Unorthodox martial artists who have plagued the world with your atrocities, today marks your end. Lifting his weapon, he called out to his allies. Demon Extermination Squad, move out. The battlefield erupted into chaos as the battle raged on. The monks of the Shaolin Temple unleashed their overwhelming strength, cutting down their enemies with precision and expertise. The unorthodox warriors who had once terrorized the region were now being swiftly and mercilessly dismantled. Mujin, observing the battle from a short distance away, felt a shiver run down his spine. I never realized it until now, but the older monks, they're unbelievably strong. They're barely even trying, yet they're mowing down the enemies like it's nothing. His gaze swept over the battlefield, watching as seasoned Shaolin monks dispatch foes with effortless efficiency. Is this the true power of the Shaolin Temple? The so-called world's strongest guiding light? Before he could contemplate further, a voice called out to him. Mujin! It was Biobgang. He turned his head just in time to see the older monk pointing forward. Monk Hwan went on ahead, Biobgang said firmly. Leave this place to us and catch up to him. Mujin gritted his teeth and muttered, all right, before breaking into a full sprint toward the interior of the stronghold. His heart pounded in his chest as an overwhelming pressure filled the air around him. He could feel it, the clashing of two immense energies ahead. This is insane, he thought. I can sense incredible forces colliding. Just what kind of battle is happening inside? Without hesitation, he rushed toward the door and threw it open. His voice rang out urgently. Monk Hwan, are you all right? There were more enemies than expected. However, the moment he laid eyes on the scene before him, his breath hitched in his throat. The battle inside the room was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. In the center, two figures clashed with terrifying force. Monk Hwan and the leader of the Tyrant Blade faction. Their attacks sent shockwaves through the room, splintering wooden beams and cracking the stone floor beneath them. Mujin's thoughts raced as he took in the intensity of their fight. What? This is insane. I've never seen such a brutal clash before. That man, he's strong enough to fight on equal footing with Monk Hwan. That must be the Tyrant Blade faction's leader. As Mujin stood frozen, the battle continued with relentless ferocity. The faction leader suddenly propelled himself into the air, his massive club whistling through the air as he swung it downward in a devastating arc high. Hwan barely evaded the attack, shifting his stance at the last possible moment before leaping skyward. Twisting midair, he retaliated with a precise strike from his wooden staff, aiming directly for the enemy's shoulder. But the Tyrant Blade faction leader was fast, unnaturally fast. He twisted out of the way, the staff barely grazing past him as he landed back on his feet. Seizing the moment, Hwan issued a command in a powerful voice. All members of the Demon Extermination Squad, begin the search within the compound. Free everyone in prison here. Search every corner thoroughly and gather any evidence that can be used against them. Even as he spoke, his battle against the Tyrant Blade faction leader continued without pause. Both fighters leaped into the air once more, their weapons clashing with thunderous force. The sheer impact sent ripples of energy through the air, and suddenly, crack! Spiderweb fractures spread along Hwan's staff. The force of their collision flung both warriors backward. Hwan landed in a crouch, his grip tightening around his now weakened staff. The Tyrant Blade faction leader, on the other hand, crashed violently against a set of wooden doors, splintering them upon impact. But instead of frustration, the man simply laughed. This is so much fun, he bellowed, rising to his feet with an exhilarated grin. You're just as strong as the rumors say, Monk Hwan. Mujin, still standing near the entrance, felt a cold sweat run down his back. He's enjoying this? His fingers trembled slightly. Should I step in and assist Monk Hwan now? Meanwhile, Hwan remained kneeling, his gaze locked on his broken staff. He exhaled sharply. He's this strong. The fractured weapon on the ground in front of him trembled slightly. Calling for reinforcements was the right decision. I assumed this faction was nothing but a band of weaklings. I was wrong. The Tyrant Blade faction leader dusted himself off and smirked. It's such an honor to be recognized by someone as renowned as you. Hwan stood, his eyes narrowing. That's not something you should be proud of. Every villain I've acknowledged has hoped that I'd soon join them in hell. The faction leader chuckled darkly. Your weapon is already shattered. How much longer do you intend to keep up this act? Slowly, Hai Guan's raised his hand, raw energy surging into his arm. His expression was cold and unwavering. The way I send them to hell is always the same, he said. They think they've won once they make me drop my weapon. But don't forget this. While I may be at a slight disadvantage, I am still from the Shaolin Temple. Even without my staff, his eyes burned with quiet intensity. I can still kill you easily. The Tyrant Blade faction leader's smirk widened. That's a bluff. But before he could finish that thought, Hai Guan's fist connected directly with his face, the impact sending a deafening boom through the chamber. The floor beneath them cracked from the sheer force of the strike. The attack wasn't just powerful, it was an invincible anti-demon punch. The faction leader's head snapped back violently. A sharp gasp left his lips as blood sprayed into the air. What just hit me? What the hell is with that power? His body hurtled across the room like a ragdoll before crashing into the ground, kicking up dust and debris. Before he could even process what had happened, Hai Guan was already airborne, his body twisting mid-leap as he prepared to strike again. My punches are actually much stronger than my staff, he declared. You're dead meat now? For the first time, the Tyrant Blade faction leader felt a twinge of fear. His instinct screamed at him. This monk was insane. What a crazy monk! But just before the finishing blow landed, Hai Guan suddenly halted his attack. Instead of delivering another punch, he turned his attention toward Mujin. Well, not right now though. Time for a lesson, Mujin. Mujin blinked, completely confused. A lesson? Before he could ask anything else, Hai Guan grabbed him roughly by the collar. I've already weakened him enough. I'll leave the rest to you. Do whatever it takes to defeat him. Mujin's eyes widened in shock. What? Are you serious? Without warning, Hai Guan threw Mujin forward, sending him hurtling toward the Tyrant Blade faction leader. The more danger there is, the more one's true strength awakens. Hai Guan shouted, "Let's go!" Mujin flailed midair, his mind spiraling into chaos. He's suddenly throwing me off a cliff? With no time to think, he landed in front of the Tyrant Blade faction leader. And just like that, the battle had shifted. Mujin versus the Tyrant Blade faction leader begins now. We got plenty more where that came from. Hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for even more amazing content.